The poor boy who helped a stranger only to know he was a billionaire. Part 2. The night Ethan walked his father to the shelter felt unreal. When he returned to the apartment, the silence inside felt different. Not empty, not suffocating, but peaceful. Claire sat at the edge of the bed, her hands clasped tightly, tears still shimmering in her eyes. "Is he gone?" she whispered. Ethan nodded. "He's at the shelter now. They'll take care of him." Claire exhaled shakily, pressing a hand to her chest. "Thank you," she whispered. "You protected us." Ethan shrugged, though inside he was trembling. "I just did what needed to be done." Claire took his hand, holding it between her fingers like something fragile. "You've grown into such a strong young man. Your father, he can't take credit for any of that. You did that, all on your own." Her words warmed something deep inside him, something that had been frozen for years. In the days that followed, life returned to its new rhythm.
Ethan woke early, packed his things for school, made sure his mother took her medication, and headed out. His steps were firmer, his posture straighter. There was a quiet confidence forming inside him, one built not from praise, but from surviving battles most kids his age never had to fight. At school, he didn't react to the whispers anymore. When kids made jokes, he didn't shrink. He didn't flinch. He didn't internalize their words. Why should he? These kids didn't know anything about him. They didn't know about the man who had offered him a job. They didn't know about the stranger who believed in him. They didn't know about the quiet strength he had found. They didn't know he was becoming someone. After school, he headed to the auto shop. Each day, Mr. Reed entrusted him with more tasks. He taught Ethan how to listen to an engine and tell what was wrong, how to read diagnostic tools, how to safely lift a car, how to understand the language of metal and machinery.
"You're a natural," Mr. Reed would say whenever Ethan succeeded. "You've got a good head on your shoulders." Ethan always nodded, though inside he wondered who he might have become if he had heard words like this growing up instead of, "You're weak, you're useless, you'll never be anything." Those memories still stung, but they didn't control him anymore. They were fading, slowly, steadily, fading. One Friday afternoon, Richard Hale arrived at the shop. He didn't announce himself the way wealthy men usually would. Instead, he walked in quietly, wearing a simple coat, smiling at familiar faces. When he reached Ethan, he gave a small nod. "Good to see you, Ethan. How's everything?" Ethan wiped his hands on a cloth. "Better," he said honestly. "A lot better." "Your mother?" "Improving," Ethan said, "thanks to the checkups." Richard placed a hand on his shoulder, a gesture that carried warmth and reassurance. "Good. That's good." Mr. Reed approached them, chuckling. "Your boy here is growing fast, sir. Won't be long before he's teaching me things." Richard glanced at Ethan with pride flickering in his eyes. "I'm not surprised." Ethan's cheeks grew warm. Praise still felt unfamiliar, like trying on a new coat that didn't quite fit yet. But he cherished it. "I'm glad to hear that everything at home is stabilizing," Richard continued. Ethan hesitated. "My father came back." Richard's brows lifted slightly. "Oh? He's at a shelter now. He asked for help, but I couldn't let him come inside." "I see," Richard said gently. "I didn't want to hate him," Ethan confessed. "But I didn't want to let him back in either." Richard nodded slowly. "Ethan, forgiveness doesn't always mean letting someone return to your life. Sometimes it means releasing the hold they have on your heart." Ethan swallowed, absorbing the words. "You protected your mother," Richard continued. "And you protected yourself. That takes strength. More strength than your father ever showed." Ethan lowered his head, emotions stirring inside him. Pain, relief, confusion, pride. "Thank you, sir," he whispered. Richard smiled. "You've earned everything coming your way, Ethan. Every good thing." Days turned into weeks. Spring settled properly now, warming the streets and bringing color back to the world. Ethan felt lighter,
His mother regained enough strength to take short walks outside. She smiled more often. She laughed sometimes, really laughed, the kind of laugh that filled the small apartment with life again. One afternoon, Mr. Dalton, the landlord, arrived to fix something in the building. He approached Ethan quietly afterward.
"I want to say,"
the landlord muttered, scratching his cheek awkwardly,
"you've been doing good. Taking care of your mother. Paying rent on time.
Ethan blinked. "Thank you."
And those repairs on the hallway wall. You didn't do that, right?"
Ethan shook his head.
Mr. Dalton nodded slowly. Figured as much. Someone's been helping you. His voice lowered slightly. Good. You deserve help. Those words would have shocked Ethan months ago. But now, they felt like a small confirmation of something bigger. People were noticing him. People were seeing him. People were respecting him, without him even trying to be noticed. Late one night, Ethan sat at the kitchen table doing homework by the weak light of a flickering lamp. His mother slept soundly in the next room. The quiet hum of the city drifted through the cracked window. He paused, pencil in hand, staring at his worn textbook. A realization washed over him slowly. Everything was working together. The pain, the struggle, the hunger, the loneliness, the cold nights, the lost father, the hopeless moments when he cried into the thin pillow. All of it had pushed him toward strength, toward resilience, toward kindness, toward a stranger who saw value in him, toward a future he never imagined. A soft knock on the door startled him. He stood quickly, heart racing, but the knock wasn't desperate or frantic. It was gentle, familiar. He opened the door. Richard stood there, holding a small envelope. "Good evening, Ethan." Ethan blinked. "Sir, is everything okay?" Richard smiled softly. "Everything is more than okay. I just wanted to give you something." He handed Ethan the envelope. Ethan opened it slowly, his heart thudding. Inside was a letter of acceptance, a scholarship, full coverage, books included, transport included, paid training included, a future included. Ethan's eyes flooded instantly. I don't know what to say," he whispered, voice breaking. Richard rested a hand on his shoulder, steady and warm. "Say you'll keep going," he replied. "Say you'll become the man you were always meant to be." Ethan nodded, tears slipping down his cheeks. "I will." Richard smiled. "I know." In that moment, Ethan felt something he had never felt so strongly before. Worth. He was not useless. He was not broken. He was not defined by his father's cruelty. He was becoming someone because life had begun weaving all the broken pieces together for his good. Ethan sat on the edge of his small bed, the scholarship letter resting in his trembling hands. It didn't feel real. It felt like something he should tuck away quickly before someone figured out the mistake and took it back. A full scholarship, training, books, transport, a clear path. His name printed neatly at the top of the letter. Not someone else's, his. His heart thudded against his ribs. Every time he blinked, he saw flashes of where he had come from. His father yelling, the cold nights, the hunger pains so sharp he had to hug his stomach tight to silence them. And now this letter, as if life had turned around and said, "You survived. Now it's your turn to rise." Richard watched him with patient eyes, standing quietly near the door. "It's a lot to take in," Richard said with a warm smile. Ethan swallowed. "Sir, I don't know how to thank you. I don't know why you're doing this." Richard stepped forward and sat across from him. His voice softened in a way that made Ethan's chest tighten. "When I was younger," Richard began, "I had someone who helped me. Someone who believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. He kept my life from going in a very different direction." His gaze deepened. "And one day I promised I would do the same for someone else." Ethan blinked. "But why me?" "Because," Richard said gently. You showed kindness without expecting anything in return. Because you took responsibility when life gave you none. Because you didn't let your father break you. Because you have a good heart, the rare kind that shines even in darkness. Ethan's throat burned with emotion. I don't know if I deserve all this.
You do, Richard said firmly. And if you doubt that, then let this be your reminder. The people who survive the hardest winters often grow into the strongest trees. The words hit Ethan so deeply, but tears filled his eyes again. He tried to blink them away, embarrassed, but Richard only smiled. You don't have to be strong all the time, Ethan. He nodded, wiping his face quickly. I want you to study, Richard continued. Learn everything you can. Build the life you dream of. Your past doesn't define you. Your choices do. Ethan folded the letter carefully, almost reverently. When does it start? In a month, Richard replied. Until then, keep working at the shop. We'll make sure you're ready. Something warm and hopeful bloomed in Ethan's chest. A month. A month until his life began to look different, completely different. The next weeks passed quietly but beautifully. His mother's health continued to improve. She began cooking small meals again, simple soups.
Warm bread. Vegetables when they could afford them. She hummed as she cleaned the apartment, her steps lighter, her eyes brighter. One evening she sat beside Ethan with a gentle smile. You seem different, she said softly. Ethan shrugged, though he couldn't hide the faint smile tugging at his lips. Different good or different bad? Good, she said. Very good. You're more at peace, more hopeful. I can see it. He looked down at his homework and mumbled. It still feels strange. Like any moment, everything could fall apart again. Claire placed a hand over his. That's the trauma talking, she whispered. But you're not alone anymore. You haven't been for a while. He nodded slowly. She was right, though it frightened him how true it was. He had spent so long believing he could only rely on himself that the idea of accepting help still felt like stepping onto thin ice. Yet the ice wasn't breaking. It was holding strong. One cool evening, Ethan decided to visit the shelter where he had taken his father. Not out of guilt, but out of a quiet, unresolved ache inside him. He wanted to know if Paul was okay, if he had chosen to take a step forward. When he arrived, a staff member recognized him. Looking for your dad? Ethan nodded. The woman smiled kindly. He's been trying. It's not easy, but he's here every day. He joins the sessions. He listens. He's even helping in the kitchen. Ethan felt something complicated swell inside him. Pain, relief, and a strange gratitude. Could I speak to him? She nodded and disappeared inside. A moment later, Paul emerged. He looked cleaner, tidier. His eyes were still tired but no longer haunted. Ethan, Paul breathed. I didn't think you'd come. Ethan shuffled awkwardly. I wanted to see how you were doing. Paul swallowed hard. Trying. I'm trying, son. Something inside Ethan loosened. It wasn't forgiveness, not fully, but it was something gentler than resentment. That's good, Ethan said. They stood in silence for a moment. You don't owe me anything, Paul murmured. I don't expect you to talk to me again, but thank you for bringing me here. Ethan nodded. Take care of yourself. He left without promises, without apologies, without trying to fix anything that wasn't his responsibility anymore. And strangely, it felt like closure. Back at the auto shop, Ethan continued learning. Mr. Reed taught him more advanced tasks. He learned how to read complex diagnostics, how to handle customer complaints, how to replace brake systems, and how engines breathe and move. You've got a future in this, Mr. Reed said one day. Scholarship or no scholarship, you're built for this kind of work. That meant more to Ethan than he could say. Even the other mechanics, Men who once barely noticed him began treating him with respect. They ruffled his hair, taught him tricks, joked with him, asked about his mother. He was part of something now.
One afternoon near the end of the month, Richard returned to the shop. This time he called Ethan aside with a serious expression. "I have something important to tell you," he said. Ethan's stomach dropped. "Is something wrong?" "No," Richard said quickly. "Not wrong, just unexpected." He handed Ethan a folder. The boy opened it. Inside was paperwork, official paperwork, a career track program, a long-term mentorship, a future position lined up, a promise of stability. Ethan's breath caught. This is too much," he whispered. Richard shook his head. "Ethan, listen to me carefully." His voice was soft but firm. "All of this, everything that has happened, every moment of pain, struggle and fear." He placed a hand on Ethan's shoulder.
"It didn't come to destroy you. It came to shape you." Ethan's eyes stung with tears. He tried to blink away. "You think life was unfair to you," Richard continued. "And yes, it was. But even in that unfairness, something was being built in you. Strength, empathy, resilience, character. The kind of character you cannot buy, the kind you cannot fake, the kind that leads men into greatness." Ethan lowered his head, overwhelmed. Richard's voice softened further. "All of it, Ethan, worked together for your good." Ethan inhaled shakily. For the first time in his entire life, he believed it. The month passed quickly, faster than Ethan was prepared for. Each day felt like something new was unfolding. New opportunities, new responsibilities, a new path forming brick by brick beneath his once unsteady feet. It was strange, almost frightening, how life could change direction simply because someone believed in you. The auto shop felt like home now. The warmth of the machinery, the honest scent of oil, the voices of the mechanics calling him kid with affection instead of mockery. It all became part of his new world. But the day the scholarship began felt different. Ethan woke up early, long before sunrise. He dressed quietly, careful not to wake his mother. He packed the few things he needed into his worn backpack. A stack of notebooks, a pencil case, his lunch, a small thermos of tea Claire insisted he take. When he stood in the main room, Claire shuffled out of her bedroom, rubbing sleep from her eyes. "Ethan, you're up early," she whispered. He nodded and smiled gently. "It's my first day. Wanted to be ready." She walked up to him, hands trembling slightly. For years she had watched him carry burdens a boy shouldn't carry. Now she was seeing him step into something better, something he had earned with every painful step. She cupped his face with her palms. "I'm so proud of you," she said, her voice cracking. "You hear me? So proud." Ethan blinked back tears and hugged her tightly, breathing in the familiar scent of her lavender soap. "Thank you for everything," he whispered. When he stepped outside, the morning air felt sharper, almost electric, as if the world was acknowledging the new chapter unfolding. The scholarship program was structured, intense and advanced, far more sophisticated than anything Ethan had ever been part of. The building itself felt intimidating with its clean floors, polished glass walls, and quiet hum of machines. He felt out of place at first. "Sir, am I supposed to be here? Sir, what if I fail? Sir, what if I'm not smart enough for this?" The doubts whispered constantly. But then he remembered the auto shop. He remembered Richard's words. He remembered the strength he gained from surviving the hardest winters. Slowly, he let himself breathe. The instructors were kind, patient, and supportive. They didn't care about where he came from. They cared about potential Ethan had in abundance. Every day he learned something new: technical drawing, mechanical principles, advanced diagnostics, problem solving.
For the first time in his life, school wasn't a place of humiliation. It was a gateway. At night, he returned to the apartment, tired but fulfilled. His mother stayed awake to hear every detail, smiling wider each time. "You're becoming something incredible," she'd tell him, and Ethan began to believe her more and more. One afternoon after class, Ethan was surprised to see Richard waiting outside, leaning against his car with a calm smile. "You have a minute?" Richard asked. Ethan nodded enthusiastically and joined him. "I've been watching your progress," Richard said, placing his hands in his pockets. "Your instructors say you're one of the most hard-working students they've ever had."
Ethan's cheeks warmed.
I just don't want to waste the opportunity you gave me."
You're not, Richard said firmly. You're honoring it.
They stood in a comfortable silence for a moment, watching students pass by. Then Richard spoke again. "You know, when I first met you, I didn't know what to expect. You were cold, tired and scared, but you helped me anyway." He smiled softly. "And now look at you." Ethan looked down, overwhelmed. "You've become more than a student, more than a worker, more than the boy who helped a stranger." Richard's voice grew gentler. "You're becoming a young man with a future." The words felt like sunlight entering a room that had been dark for years. "Thank you, sir," Ethan whispered, "for seeing something in me." Richard shook his head. "No, Ethan, you did the hard work. I just opened a door." As the months passed, everything continued to shift. Ethan grew more confident, more skilled, more certain of who he was becoming. He excelled in class. He improved rapidly at the shop. He began saving small amounts of money each week. He even helped his mother with her medication schedules and encouraged her during her difficult recovery days. He didn't forget his father either. Every 2 or 3 weeks he visited the shelter. Paul was healing slowly, physically and emotionally. He apologized many times, but Ethan didn't rush forgiveness. He didn't force healing. He simply offered presence, which was its own kind of grace. Paul cried the first time Ethan told him, "I'm not angry anymore. I'm trying to forgive you. It might take time, but I'm trying." And that was enough. 1 year passed. A full year of growth. A full year of stability. A full year of learning who he really was. On the anniversary of the night he helped Richard with the car, something special happened. Richard invited Ethan and Claire to a small gathering at the company's headquarters. It wasn't fancy. It wasn't loud. It was just a quiet room with a few close colleagues. Richard stood in front of them with a plaque in his hands. "I want to recognize someone today," he began. "Someone who reminds all of us that kindness matters, that small actions can change lives, that character is more valuable than wealth." He turned toward Ethan, eyes warm and proud. "This young man helped me when he had nothing. No warmth, no food, no comfort, no safety. But he offered kindness anyway, something many people with far more than him refused to give." Ethan's chest tightened. Richard held up the plaque. "The Service Award for Example Character, presented to Ethan Miller." Ethan stepped forward with trembling hands and took the plaque. Everyone clapped, but Ethan didn't hear them properly. He only heard the words echoing in his heart. "You are worthy. You are valued. You are becoming who you were meant to be." After the ceremony, as the small crowd dispersed, Richard approached him quietly. "You've come a long way, Ethan," he said. Ethan nodded, smiling through the emotion in his eyes. "Thanks to you." Richard looked him straight in the eyes. "Thanks to you, Ethan. You made the choice to keep going, and now your future is yours. Completely yours." Ethan tightened his grip on the plaque. He had survived the darkness. He had grown from the pain. He had risen from a childhood that tried to destroy him. He had changed the ending of his own story. He had become more than a poor boy in a cold apartment. He had become a young man with hope, purpose, and a future that even his father's cruelty couldn't stop. And he knew now, deeply, that every struggle, every heartbreak, every silent tear had worked together for his good.